Welcome everyone to another session of the Cloud Computing Question and Answer session. If you desire to get your first cloud architect job or your first solution architect job or your first enterprise architect job or cloud engineer job, that's why we're here. So I can answer your questions to help you get that first cloud job and get cloud hired or cloud promoted as fast as possible. Time is money. And when you're looking to get a job, the longer it takes you to get there, the more money you're losing. And I want you all getting hired and having the world's greatest cloud computing career. So you can get that great cloud architect job, that great solution architect job, that great cloud engineer job. So bring us your questions so we can help maximize your career. Before we begin, there's a few things that I'm super excited to talk about. My team and I are running a flash sale, which is 35% off of our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. If you want to be cloud hired, like some of those amazing students you've seen, and that's just a small percentage of our people that got cloud hired, attend our Cloud Architect Career Development Program and you'll get your first cloud architect job. Attend our Cloud Engineer Career Development Program to get your first cloud engineer job. So take advantage of the time, upskill yourself, increase your career. Inflation is high, double your salary. So go out there and take advantage of the flash sale. Now, while we're at it, if recruiters are not hammering at you every single day, if you're not getting interview requests every day, you need to tune your LinkedIn and resume workshop. Now, the reality is getting an interview versus winning the interview are two different things. Our resume workshop and LinkedIn workshop will have people coming to you so that you don't have to be applying for jobs and getting auto-rejected by HR. People will be coming to you. So keep that in the back of your mind. That's why we have the LinkedIn and Resume Workshop. It's going to be in September. It's going to be very low cost. Now, next week, we're going to have a very special How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar, and our internet connections are going to be working. Yesterday, my AT&T connection and my Verizon connection went out, so now I'm going to have an AT&T and a Verizon and a T-Mobile connection by next week. You know, one is none. I would never have a single internet service provider, so I had two, but they both failed. So now apparently I need three, so I never get kicked off while I'm doing live streaming. So we're going to have a really special How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. Please sign up. The link is in the description below. So I want to get you all cloud hired, all of you. Our students are all getting hired, but even if you're not, I still want to give you the guidance so you know how to get cloud hired. So these are some of the things that we're doing. We also have a book on passing the Google Professional Cloud Architect exam coming soon. The link for that should be in the description below. You can pre-register now. So I am sure at this point there are some people that have some questions, and I'd love to answer your questions. What I'd say is, if in the chat box you can give me two things. The first, give me your geography. Tell me where you are located. I'm in Port St. Lucie, Florida. I'm looking at Leo over there, and I know he's in Sao Paulo. I'm looking at Eddie over there, and I see he's in Bamenda, Cameroon. And I know Chris Johnson, who's on this call, is over in Tampa. Tell us where you're at with the hashtag. And then while you're at it, if you give us a hashtag of the career that you desire for that solution architect job or that cloud architect job, whatever it is, please let us know so we can get you hired. Give you the best advice. I see somebody in Melbourne, Florida. You're pretty close to me. My wife was just there yesterday for gymnastics.
All right, Mike, let's see if there's any questions from Zoom. I'm not on Zoom, so I'll let you ask them if they have questions.
Does anyone on Zoom have any questions to kick it off? You can come off mute, you can come off mute, ask me your question, and I'll answer your question. And if not, we can go for some questions on YouTube, or I can talk until some of the questions come in. But don't be shy, anybody. Don't be any shy. We're soft and warm and cuddly like teddy bears around here because we want you to have the best career. So don't be afraid to ask. The reason I do this is when I left internal medicine 20 years ago to join tech, I didn't know where to go. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars and so much time on certification classes, and nobody cared. And then I figured out what it took to get hired, and poof, not only was I hired, I had a career that blossomed like you can't even imagine. And that's what I want to get you there. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So let's unmute Prem on Zoom for the first call, for the first question.
Hey, hi, Mike. Good morning. So my question is that of late I've been attending a couple of interviews. Now I've been seeing a kind of I don't know whether to tell that as a kind of a pattern actually. Now the interview usually the interviewer has a discussion with me, and it is usually not one round because I have a couple of rounds of discussion, and then finally, probably at the sixth or seventh round, they send me a mail stating that they've decided on account of business reasons to close stop hiring. Now, I do not know whether I think whether others also felt the same thing, but I feel that there are a couple of jobs which are available. I mean, say at least from LinkedIn and from other job portals, which wherein you see that there is a potential job offering, and then you get a call and you have a discussion, and the discussion actually leads not only for one, it leads to a couple of rounds, and then finally they decide that probably I think we're going to close this offer or I'm going to say because of business reasons. Now, I really do not know now like whether it's like a kind of fake job, and in fact I don't know
Mhm.
the name,
That's what's
and
going
it
on.
has been also with some premier prestigious organization also. I found the same similar patterns happening to me. Now what could be the reason actually, Mike?
There's two reasons. One is some offers, like I've had some students that got $300,000 offers, and one or two of them had them pulled very recently. Of course, I mean, my students are getting hired every single day. Most likely, were you an engineer? And have you been an engineer in your career?
No, I'm not being an engineer, I'm being a domain expert.
In what?
I'm actually basically an accountant actually by profession. I work with the financial services stream, and I'm going to say part of my I'm going to say 50% of my career I was a banker, and then about 50% of my career I've been into the domain side of banking. So I handle mostly the risk and analytics and the compliance related solutions. So I would call myself more from a compliance audit, a GRC professional, I would say, rather than
Yeah.
to be a hardcore technology professional. I would say I would call myself as a GRC professional.
Yeah, so you're still an engineer. Um, and that job is very engineering. There's a big difference between finance and accounting, for example. The finance side, where you're looking at an opportunity, you're evaluating the potential for the opportunity, you're calculating net present value or future values, and then you got to go sell somebody into buying it. That's all vision. And then there's the exact opposite side of it, which is the engineering side of it, which is accounting. It's the micro details of where things are going, looking for the extreme gotchas, looking to make sure things balance on both sides of the financial equation. Is that the side that you're on?
No, I think I wouldn't say. See, the thing is that it's um, now I'm going to say I don't do any more pure accounting or finance jobs, but the thing is that I do work on areas which relate the deep domain expertise. Now, let's say if I'm working on a regulatory compliance for a financial institution, you have certain detailed domain ways of actually converting the business requirements into technical requirements,
Right?
okay, of making the product. So I've been more into a kind of a product owner's role, sometimes a kind of a scrum master, sometimes as a subject matter expert, because since I work in a consulting organization attached to the product, so it's like basically the first thing is that I'm going to say, when the clients actually ask me is that, hey, can you please explain this functionality? So the user guide is actually talking something else, but here is the roadblock. Now the thing is that you synthesize and then explain I'm going to say the whatever is the functionality in simpler terms to what the client actually is looking for. Second thing is that in case if there is a requirement mismatch from the guidelines, then you again take back to the product and then take it as a kind of a patch, and then again you release that. You getting my point?
Yes, and the way you're communicating it is going to get me to my answer. So, could you tell me that in 30 seconds or less, pretend I was the CEO of a business and I know nothing about it.
30 seconds.
Yeah. I'm a CEO of a business. Explain that to me in 30 seconds or less with executive presence and power. And
Okay. I will help your business in actually converting your business requirements into technical solutions, wherein you will get more value addition, and then you will get a return on your investments.
okay. Tell me, what is a load balancer?
No, I've not been working actually on the cloud area.
Oh, okay. So I thought you said you were going for multiple interviews in the cloud, and that you were reaching the end.
No, not in the cloud area. I think so the jobs were actually mostly in data privacy, mostly into IT audit roles and compliance roles, but not in cloud.
I was going to get to this before, but I'm going to definitely get to it now. It's a communication skills challenge. You've got a lot in you, but when you try and explain it, it's very hard to figure out what you actually know.
Okay.
And that's going to keep you from getting the highest paid jobs and the better ones. What's going to happen is you're going to go through your screener interviews. Interview 1 is going to go well. Interview 2 is going to go well. At some point, you're going to get to this big discussion, big panel, big presentation, or a decision maker, and they're not hearing the executive presence in your voice. That's why I tried to ask you to do something in 30 seconds or less, and you're not getting to the point fast enough, and you're losing them. So what I'd like you to remember on these interviews is when you're dealing with these positions where you're looking for something in power, you're dealing with executives. Executives have a tenth of a second attention span, and you got to get into that interview. You got to make your point, hit it hard, move on to the next point, hit it hard, and close as fast as possible. So when you communicate, if you can make your point, pause, make your next point, pause, make your next point, pause, and vary your vocal tone a little more, people will take you much more seriously, and I think you're going to get some better options.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear you speak for a little bit to truly get it, because typically speaking, when we're dealing with an interview, it's either a competency side, and I don't believe that on your end. You seem very educated and very intelligent, but I did have some difficulties trying to interpret what you were saying, and I'm an executive, so I'm sure that's where you're running into trouble.
Okay.
So practice that. Practice in front of a mirror. Record yourself speaking. Really practice to gain some executive presence, or we could train you in that. And I think you'd be in good shape.
Sure. Okay.
Good question.
All right, so our next one is going to come from YouTube.
Okay.
Let's see. I think Shao is going to put it up. My computer is still having difficulties, but apparently I can talk.
I need you. Thank you so much for the content you have on YouTube. How does our paid course work? Let me explain that to you in 3 ways. We actually have multiple elements to our program. We have live training 3 times per week on Zoom, and I feel that live training is relatively important whenever possible because it gives our students a chance to get together, participate in classes. I ask them questions, they respond to me, they ask me questions, they can talk about their homework or things that they're lost. So we have live classes 3 times per week. And each class stands alone, so it doesn't matter when you join the program. And in 2 of the 3 live classes, we'll be designing architectures just like we do in the exact real job. On one of the classes, we're going to focus on the leadership skills, the presentation skills, the sales skills, negotiation skills, executive presence, CXO relevancy, and all those other businessy things that are critical for these jobs. Because you can't get an architect job by just studying the tech. You can't. You need both the business and the tech. Now, in between live classes in DU, we have about 500 hours of total training. A video about tell me about yourself, which is the first question on most interviews. A career development plan, which my team works on. Career goal sheets. Presentations, architectures, career planning, SMART goals, everything that's really necessary to make you an incredible cloud architect. from big capstone architectures all the way to your presentation skills. And then there's the third component, which is the technical skills. Now, architects aren't hands-on positions. We're design, present, and sell positions. But somewhere along the line, someone's going to say, have you done this before? And there's two ways that you can do interviews. You can say, yes, I've set up an EC2 instance in S3 bucket, and the hiring manager will say, yeah, that's cute. I taught my 8-year-old to do it. And I've taught an 8-year-old to do it too. Or you could say that you've done labs that really means you know it. So look, we'll have our students do some AWS labs and Azure labs just because it's good to say we've done them. But then we do real labs with our students. And in these real labs, we'll give you access to our data center, and you'll be working with server virtualization and containers and file storage and file servers, VPN concentrators and firewalls, web applications you'll be working with. You'll be working with Active Directory servers, which you'll create and build yourself. And you will build a cloud in my program because we have to get you competent. See, when it's someone's first job or they're changing careers, we've got to show competency far more than experience. So those are the three elements that go on in our program. You will stay in our program for up to a year until you're hired, and nobody needs a year if they do our work. But we're so obsessed with getting people hired that if you have to stay with us a little longer, even a year, I don't care. I just want you hired. So that's what we do. We do live training 3 times per week. In between classes, we've got videos and reading assignments, architecture assignments, presentations, all kinds of things to make it great. And then we've got a lab component. And I need you. I'd love to answer more questions on it, but the point is, graduation for us is cloud hire. We'd love to help you get cloud hire. So who's next with which question am I asking?
Okay, Mike, we have a question from Michael on Zoom. Michael is asking, how in depth is in Linux command should an engineer know? As an engineer, would I be creating subnet host range and IP addressing, or will that be given to engineer via someone higher?
That's the thing. Now, in an optimal world, your architects are designing the IP addressing scheme because they're most senior people on your team in terms of the way it's going to lay out. But it doesn't always work out this way. As a cloud engineer, you must have extremely good at Linux engineering skills, almost to the degree of a Linux engineer. So you're going to be setting up Linux systems. You're going to be administering Linux systems. You're going to be editing text files in Linux systems. You're going to be setting up web servers in Linux systems, DHCP thing. Well, maybe not in today's world, but you could be setting up DNS inside of these systems. You're going to be writing bash scripts on Linux systems. For a cloud engineer, you need to be strong on Linux. Now, you don't need some silly DevOps certification. You don't need some silly SysOps certification, but Linux knowledge, wow, you need to know it for the cloud engineer. So, Michael, that cloud engineer needs to be rock solid in networking and data center technologies, because the cloud is nothing more than a network and a data center. They need to be rock solid on Linux, at least as good as a Linux sysadmin. Then they need relatively good Python skills. And then they need relatively good bash shell scripting skills and relatively good Terraform skills. As you can see, it's harder to become a cloud engineer than it is a cloud architect. But it's a great career for those that really love being hands-on tech. Hands-on tech. So I think it's a great career, but understand this is where the work is for the cloud engineer. It's on Linux. Nearly all of the supercomputers in today's world are on Linux. Like 495 of the top world's biggest web servers are actually all on Linux. So everything's Linux. We use Windows for Active Directory, often Windows for Microsoft Exchange, great email and calendaring, but for the most part, it's all Linux in today's modern world. So you must, Michael, be extremely good at Linux as a cloud engineer. Extremely good. And that's why these skills are specialists, because the architect needs so much business acumen, leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, and end-to-end design. End-to-end design. And the engineer needs extreme depth in terms of building it. And And what are we building? Networking stuff, Linux servers, Windows servers, infrastructure as code, and scripting and automating for the cloud engineer. As you can see, architect, engineer, totally different careers and totally different skill sets. So I don't know which question is next. LM. How will the LinkedIn session on 9/9 work? You was looped into a non-essential meeting during the first hour and want to know if it will be active during the session or if I need to take time off. Well, here's the thing. This is going to be a pretty important day. So LM, if you're in my Cloud Architect Career Development course, it doesn't matter. You'll have access to this training after the fact because we do this once a month. But if you're not, I would try to be present in this session, because we're going to talk about how do you map someone's life in another world to tech. And that's really the kind of thing we're going to be mapping somebody old's job to tech to show relevant experience. So I would recommend that you participate in it and participate fully. I'm kind of a person LM in life where, I either do it or I don't. But if I do it, I put 1,000% into everything that I can. So we really are going to show people how to build their portfolio. And we're going to use 2 or 3 examples from the class and show people what to do. I recently did this on a psychologist's resume, and she's now working as a cloud architect. And her last job is as a mental health tech. She had a bachelor's degree in psychology, or was a master's degree in psychology. I can't remember. Wonderful, wonderful person. But I tried to show when we did this resume class that the psychology experience was equivalent to the cloud architect job. Boom, she was getting hammered by recruiters, and now she's cloud hired. So, I'd say try to maximize the session, because I want to know that you're going to get the maximum results. And if you bought the session, it's up to you, but I want you to get maximum results. I'm kind of hardcore though. Admittedly, my team will tell you that. But I want you to win LM. So if you're going to buy the course, please try and attend as much of it as possible. How do you get your resume to the hiring manager? So Karina, if you have the right brand and the right resume and the right LinkedIn profile, you will be harassed beyond anything you can possibly dream. I've got one student that gets 15 interview requests per day right now. My average student gets between 5 to 15 interview requests per week after our LinkedIn training. Now, Karina, here's the thing. Here's what gets people hired. A resume is nothing more than an advertisement that says, why should I bring you in? Now, what's going on is, if you realize with advertisements, we've got a couple of problems. One is the advertisement needs to be effective. So knowing what to put on your resume is the key, because otherwise we're not advertising the right thing. If your resume, and you want to be an architect, and your resume looks like an engineer, you're not getting hired. I'm going to tell you that right now, because they don't want an engineer. So if you got a resume full of SysOps certifications and DevOps certifications on there, and all this coding and configuring stuff as an architect, you're not getting interviewed. And that's the problem, because you got to have the resume match the brand. So Apple's got a focused brand, Mercedes has a focused brand, and your resume needs to scream cloud architect, solution architect, cloud engineer, enterprise architect, or whatever job you desire. So that's number one. Your resume has to be right. So that means knowing exactly what to put on your resume and LinkedIn profile that's going to be like bait to the sharks to get them to come swim. Because you got to put out the right bait. It means removing the stuff. For example, sometimes we have to get rid of certifications, especially if they're lightweight certifications or irrelevant certifications. It then means transitioning your experience into something that's relevant. For example, if I've got a web developer that spent the last 10 years making websites, that's not relevant experience to the cloud architect because it's a different job. But if we can talk about the sales impact from these new websites, or if we could talk about the impact of some new application and what it did to customer experience, revenues, employee productivity. Now, Karina, we're screaming architect, 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 because the architect's role is digital transformation, not the tech. So it's a matter of making sure you've got the right things that are on your resume, the things that employers are looking for, the things that recruiters know employers are looking for. So they're like vultures coming upon you and getting out of there. So that's really the key. And when you've got the right resume, the world just comes to you. Like Delroy Batt, one of my students who got his first cloud architect job. By the way, no 4-year degree, no experience whatsoever, but he got hired at CDW and he's fantastic. He's incredible. I said, did you apply for this job? He laughed at me. He said, why would I apply? Recruiters come to me every day. And half of my students are in a position where they're just getting bombarded with more recruiter requests than they have. And they usually come to class and they say, Mike, I'm not ready yet to get hired. What do I do with all these requests? And we've got a system for that as well. But that's what you've got to do. You've got to make yourself look so attractive that the world comes to you. That's what we do for our students. And they get bombarded by hiring managers and recruiters. Bombarded. Then they get hired. Just they have the right skills too. Great question, Karina.
Okay, we now have a question from Prem.
Okay.
How much of coding / scripting skills are required for a cloud architect?
0. Cloud architects do not touch the technology ever. We design, present, and sell technology solutions. We are not software engineers. We are not engineers. We're not scripting engineers. We don't touch the technology. Cloud architect skills include business acumen, leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, high levels of emotional intelligence, CXO relevancy, executive writing, negotiation skills. They're architect skills. Additionally, knowledge of the network and the data center so we can design it. Meaning, how do we take all that stuff? The routers, the switches, the virtual machines, the containers, the firewalls, the VPN concentrators, the IDS IPS systems, the CRM systems, ERP systems. How do we take that stuff and move it to the cloud? So we design it. So the architect is a designer. We don't touch the tech. It's no different than a building architect. You ask them to design a house, they design a house. You say, I want a pool, I want a garden, I want it to be 4 stories tall. I want a beautiful balcony, and they design it. But they don't build it. That's what the construction crew does. It's the same thing for the architects. Cloud architects and solution architects do not touch the technology. We go to meetings. We buy technology. We buy lunches. We buy dinners and drinks. And the only people that ever get techie are the most technical architects, which are by far the lowest paid. They get paid half of the more businessy enterprise architects. So, that's kind of the key. We don't touch the technology. Ever. And that's the big misconception, especially when people are saying, I'd like experience of this, but the reality is they will only hire you to design, present, and sell. James White, hello, Mike. I'm in your course. Will the LinkedIn help me? Will it be necessary? And should I have co-read the curriculum? James White, if you're in our course, you're going to be attending it anyway, so you don't need to sign up for it. If you're part of our live Cloud Architect Career Development Program, it is included for you. So there's nothing else for you to do, just come and attend it. If you're part of the basic one, definitely I strongly recommend that you attend or upgrade to the full course where you can attend the live classes. And yes, it will be highly relevant for what you're doing this lesson. But it's not necessary if you're part of our live course because you're getting it anyway. And so, hi, Mike, you noticed the requirement for a cloud architect role is experience responding to RFIs and RFPs. How do you deal with it? And so, if you do not have business acumen, you can't get these jobs. So, Anshul, if your study plan is, and I'm not saying it is, pass a certified solution architect professional, an Azure solution architect expert, and a Google professional cloud architect, and have 3 certifications of getting hired, the world will not be interested in you. So what you do need to do is get this. Now, in our training program, our students respond to RFIs, requests for information, requests for proposals, requests for quotes. We do these kind of projects together because you must know how to do these things. So Anshul, I want you to make it very clear. We may not touch the technology as a cloud architect, but you'll be documenting things, presenting thought leadership papers. You'll be giving presentations. You will be responding to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, presenting at executive briefings, leading business councils of CXO leaders. You'll be negotiating billion-dollar plus deals. You're going to be giving presentations. You're going to be working booths at conferences. You're going to be entertaining clients, buying lunches, dinners, and drinks. One year I spent close to $200,000 on lunches, dinners, and drinks, entertaining clients as an architect, because that's what we do. Thankfully, I had a great company credit card to do so, but that's the point. So what you need to do is get this kind of experience. So Angela, you can also, let's be fair, you can get hired when you have no experience, but you've got to prove competency. Competency matters much more experience. But when it comes to proving competency, you have to be able to walk and talk. So if I interview you and you and I are having a business level conversation, I feel good about you. If I ask you what is block storage and you go S3, interview's over. But if I ask you about block storage and you describe the storage area and network technology, and you describe to me the way it works, and you describe to me how it's used and its strengths and its weaknesses and its limitations and its impact on business, I say Anshul is an architect. If I ask you about BGP and you give me something like a TCP port 179, I say, okay, memorize the test. But if you talk about the scalability, the tunability, and then how to optimize it, I see you as an architect. So Anshul, I need you to look at it this way. It's not what you've done. It's what you know. It's all about what you know. It's never about the experience. Look, on my first job, they wanted 10 years experience. I had 0. On my second job, they wanted 15 years experience. I had 6 months. It's never about the experience. It's can you do the job? And what happens is if you look at an RFI, RFP, RFQ, and you don't even know what it is, they're going to sense that gap. And then they're going to say engineer, not architect. So don't worry so much about doing it. Because, look, I've never been on an interview where I didn't get hired. And I've never had more than 10% of the skills on the job description, silly wish list that they put out there. But I was darn good at all those critical skills for my job. This is a critical skill. Writing is a critical skill. How critical is it, Anshul? I have my students write books and blogs and things like that. We write a book together and make it look like an RFP. And we do these kinds of experiences because you need to be able to say that you've done it. You need to be able to say that you know how to do it, even if you've done it in a small environment. And so why do you think I have my students build clouds? Architects don't touch the technology ever. We design, present, and sell. But I want to be able to say they have hands-on experience just to be able to say it. That's the whole point of doing some of these things, is to show you have hands-on experience. So make sure whatever you're doing, there's some form of a mock RFI, RFP, RFQ that you're working on. My students do things like this all the time. Absolutely. So it is a requirement to do these business things. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a critical requirement. I just spoke to the CEO of a recruiting firm of a architecture firm just yesterday. And what happened was he had interviewed one of my students and liked my students so much, he wanted more of my students because my student didn't even accept this job. He took another enterprise architect job at the same time. And he was saying, Mike, I want well-rounded people. I want people that can present. I want people can talk. I don't want engineers as architects. I want good business acumen, good sales skills, good negotiation skills. He gave us a list of 14 things, and only one of them was technical. Only one of them was technical. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay, Mike, we have another question from Prem.
Okay.
He's asking how much of networking knowledge is required for the cloud architect?
A whole lot. So we have to look at the cloud as a network and a data center. So if you don't know the network and the data center, you don't know the cloud. So on the networking side, what we're talking about is IP addressing, subnetting, supernetting, route aggregation, route summarization sort of things. We're talking about BGP, the routing protocol, how to tune it, how to expand it. We're talking to some degree about interior gateway protocols such as OSPF. We're talking about WAN technologies such as SSL-based VPNs, IPsec-based VPNs, private lines, Ethernet over MPLS, software-defined networking, and SASE. We're talking about NAT, one-to-one NAT, one-to-many NAT, static NAT, dynamic NAT, or port address translation. On the networking side, we're talking about switching concepts, which includes VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, port channel, ether channel, link aggregation groups kind of thing. On the network side, we're talking about ARP and proxy ARP and DNS and DHCP. At minimum, ideally, there's some element of QoS that we're talking about. So those are the minimum things to know. I'd say, it's about 5,000 to 10,000 pages of reading on the networking side. That's the minimum. Of course, people that take our program, they don't have to read the 10,000 pages because we take whatever it is, we pull out just the stuff they need, and we curate that to create the best architects. Because architects don't need to have network engineering knowledge like me, but they do need to have enough networking architecture knowledge to be able to get the job done. Great question. Chris or Eddie or somebody tell me the next one. Emmanuel, can you shed a light on this? How do you avoid latency across two different AZs since the read replica is asynchronous? You can't. You don't. There's a great RFC 1925, and it's a bunch of networking and internet truths. It's also very old. It's written by the Society of Old Farts, as they like to call themselves when they wrote this. It's a comedy request for comments. When the IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, has RFCs, requests for comments, which are the specs. And this was a comedy one, but it included the 12 networking truths. The first one is you cannot, no matter how hard you try, increase the speed of light. So yes, there is latency across availability zones. How much latency is it? Negligible, 1 to 2 milliseconds. And for normal things, it does not matter at all. At all. So there's that. Now, if you were dealing with a financial trading application, then, latency would be different. And you might not even put it in the cloud because the latency wire to the cloud, the low performance of block storage on the cloud compared to data center performance. So there's that. So you will have latency. You're also going to have latency when you go from multi-clouds. And in most cases, it doesn't matter. See, here's the thing. I mean, if you put your systems in two availability zones, hopefully you've got some degree of availability. Now, that's not enough. I'm going to tell you right now. Anybody that puts all their stuff in a single cloud is just inviting failure. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say it. I've never designed a single service provider system in 25 years. Nobody that I know would be crazy enough to do it. And then the cloud providers tell people they can. But wait, Google couldn't do 4 nines last year, meaning 99.99%. Microsoft couldn't do 4 nines last year, and AWS wasn't even close to 4 nines last year. Hey, wait, AWS isn't close to 4 nines this year either. They had another power failure last month in a data center, which took down parts across the globe. And just 2 days ago, they had another outage with their Elastic Container Service that took down systems all across the globe as well. So the point is you've got to use multiple clouds and multiple availability zones per cloud, or one availability zone for 3 or 4 different clouds, and then you're going to be rock solid. But yes, there is going to be latency. It is unavoidable. The only way that you would not have latency is if you use 2 different availability zones in the same region, and that would give you close together. That would minimize the latency because the latency is determined by the routing and switching hardware, the length of the cables, and the speed of light. Good question, though. Chris or Eddie, if you guys tell me where I'm headed next. Alexander, good to see you today. Hi, Mike. Which would you showcase and which would you skip on your resume from a non-tech background? In your case, a restaurant owner. So Alex, from the restaurant perspective, and I know your restaurant perspective because we come from the same world, there are certain things, for example, if you're running a restaurant, you are concerned with sales, which means revenue. You are concerned with the management of making sure the people are there. If you own your restaurant, for the most part, there is a process, or at least there should be a process. In your case, it's a pizza. What's the right way to make the pizza better fast? You weigh the dough. Is it stretched a certain way? Is it refrigerated a certain way? Is there a process to roll it out? Is there a process to make the sauce the same way each time? Or is it the way we do it in my Greek house, which is sort of like, this looks good. No, I need a little more of this. But in general, that works great when my yaya makes it, for example, but it doesn't work good when I've got a new 18-year-old person in the kitchen that needs to cook. So I'm sure you've developed some processes to get things done a little better. So I would frame the business side of it that you've already done. I would frame the solution solving. People come in there, they're not always in the happiest mood. You got to cheer them up. Sometimes you get a complaint and you got to fix that. So those problem resolution skills, those business acumen skills, the interaction with people skills, very important. The being able to consult with someone and figure out what they like and make them happy. The relationship management skills, Alex, those are critical skills for the architect. Showing that would be something big for you. And then proving your competency. That's the second half of it. Now, Alexander, I think you're pretty close to proving your competency because I spoke to you last week and it's looking, or 2 weeks ago, and you're seeming rock solid. So keep getting more rock solid, and then talk about the business component of what we do. And then you'll be in great shape. Lots of good things coming for you, Alex. Does OpenStack correlate Cruise? All clouds are nothing more than networks and data centers. So stop thinking about cloud. Let's think about reality. If you need to go buy a paper towel for your house, and you go to the store, and they don't have Bounty paper towels, you buy the department store brand or somebody else. It doesn't have to be Bounty, the quicker picker-upper. And if you went to go buy your Bounty paper towels at Home Depot, Lowe's, Acme Supermarkets, Publix Supermarkets, Ace Hardware, Target, Amazon, you're still getting paper towels. Who cares where you bought it from? A cloud is nothing more than a network and data center. And that's the difference between learning the cloud versus learning AWS. If I teach you how to drive a car, honk, honk, turn the key, gas, brake, whatever, you know how to drive a car. If it's a Ford, if it's a Mercedes, if it's a BMW, if it's a McLaren or a Ferrari, it doesn't matter. If it's a Honda, if it's a Renault, whatever, you just drive the car. They all drive the same way. So when you learn the Cloud Cruise properly, not like they teach you in a certification, because that's not learning properly at all. But if you know what a virtual machine is, now when you're in the data center and it's a KVM virtual machine, a QEMU virtual machine in the data center, a VMware ESXi virtual machine, a Citrix Zen virtual machine, an AWS EC2 instance, an Azure virtual machine, a Google Compute Engine instance, or a virtual machine in OpenStack, or a virtual machine in Oracle, Nutanix, it's the same technology. It's identical. It's all the same. There's no such thing as the cloud. It's just a network and a data center with some software sitting on top of it that you rent out. So it's identical. The only things that are different is like there's the Bon Jovi song. Only the names have changed. Yesterday, I think we're fading away or something like that. It's the same thing. There was another song from The Who, Meet the New Boss. Same as the old boss. It's all the same. The clouds are just the same. You walk into any one of these things and they look identical. It's the same racks with the same servers and the same network gear and the same storage area networks. The only difference is which brand is on it. That's it. So it correlates almost identically. Hakeem, hey Mike, it seems like there are a lot of $200,000 jobs, yes, for the non-technical professionals. For example, strong technicals. So here's the thing, Hakeem, if your goal is to earn as little as possible, focus on the tech. I'm going to say this again. If your goal is a low salary, focus on the tech. I'm going to say it again. If your goal is a low salary, focus on the tech. Now, if your goal is a high salary, focus on digital transformation. Big difference. Now, Hakeem, I want you to think like a business executive, because architects are business executives. Who am I going to pay more to? Architect one that knows nothing about technology but brought in $1 billion of sales. Architect two that's the techie guru that knows everything, that can't close a deal. That person's getting fired. Instantly, they cost money. If I had a bozo that knew nothing but was business relevant, and I had a genius engineer that wanted to be an architect, I'm firing the genius engineer and I'm still hiring the bozo. Because what we're dealing with is we're looking for somebody that can transform a business. An architect skill is business transformation. An engineer skill is tech. If you want to be an engineer, focus on engineering. If you want to be an architect, let's be fair, you will not do these things. You will be designing, presenting, and sell. Architects don't touch the technology. They don't code, they don't configure. You may see it in a garbage job description, but we don't do it. Of the last 100 plus architects we've gotten hired, not a single one has touched the technology yet. I'm going to say it again. In the last 100 plus architects we've gotten hired, none of them have ever seen the management console, the CLI. They don't code, they don't configure. And my highest earning architects are the ones that don't know that know the tech the least. In fact, we were speaking to another architecture firm just yesterday. I spoke to the CEO. They said, look, we have enterprise architects that don't know any tech. We have cloud architects that basically know some tech and a whole lot of business. We don't want techie architects. They say we get thousands of AWS certified people. They said hundreds per day, and none of them know anything about architecture. They all know how to configure, but they don't know architecture, and we need architects. So, Hakeem, you got a choice. You can build your career in two ways. If your goal is high salary, you have two options. You have the option to be an executive like me that'll earn far more than $200,000 a year 20 years ago as an architect, or you can be the ones that focus on the tech, and get paid $130,000 a year. It's up to you. And I can't tell you what's right or wrong. It's going to be what's going to make you happy, but architects are not engineers. The more techie you are as an architect, the more you'll be considered an engineer. I had to, in order to really raise my salary, and I didn't just raise it a little, it was well over $100,000 raise. I pretended not to know half of the technology and put on better suits. And every time somebody asked me something really technical, I said, you know what? I know this great unified communications architect. Let me get him involved. Mike, let's talk about IAM. Guess what? I know this great IAM architect. Let me get them involved. Mike, we need something in the security side. Let me get you this great security architect. Mike, we need some really good networking. Even though I'm a network architect, let me get you another network architect. And I did that, and I led the groups. Now, I got to tell you, I hear it from CEOs constantly. I hear it from executives constantly. I hear it from hiring managers. They say, please stop sending me overly tech people. And they said, I don't get them from you, Mike. I get executives from you that know tech. He said, but other people, they get 18,000 certifications and they want to be techies. And I don't want techies. So Hakeem, do not focus on the tech if your goal is salary. If your goal is the tech, focus on the tech and it's fine. You'll enjoy it. You'll love it. It's great. But if your goal is salary, you got to look at it this way. On the list of architects and their pay, it's going to be like this. At the bottom end, we have the technical architect. That's your $130,000 position. Then we get to our average cloud architect, which is around $160,000 a year. Then we teach our cloud architects business acumen, leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence. Then they're $250,000 a year. And then they start to forget the tech and learn much more about business processes, much more about leadership skills, ROI modeling, negotiation. Now we've got a $500,000 architect. So where do you want to be? You want to be the person that brings in $1 billion sale? In fact, one of my architects was sending me last night. He's like, I just met another architect. He just bought a 2022 Ferrari. He closed $48 million in business this year. And the guy said, I spoke to the architect. I said, what did he know about tech? And he says, honestly, Mike, it was embarrassing. I've been teaching him tech, and I've never worked as an architect before today. And you taught me about 10 times more tech than anybody here knows. And the point is I teach enough tech to get people hired. I do. And my people have more tech than anybody else. But the key is that's not what I'm only doing the tech to make sure they can pass the interviews. Once all my architects get hired, it's like, Mike, I went to a meeting. I bought a new house. I got some beautiful new cats, just like you, Mike. I'm going to another meeting. And it's all meetings. There's no tech in our architect jobs. I wish there was, but there isn't. VP, Mike, I heard from a Microsoft CSA one needs to have strong hands-on in tech along with soft skills. But as you always say, Cs don't need hands-on. Can I please clarify? Look, I'm telling you, of my 25 years experience, this is not a hands-on job at all. Now, everybody in India seems to be obsessed with hands-on experience, at least on paper. And then what happens is you interview somebody with hands-on experience and they have no idea how to architect, and they have lots of ideas. Now, India has an extremely strong engineering culture, one of the strongest engineering cultures in the world. And there is a bias in India towards hands-on experience. Now, having said that, I've gotten a ton of people jobs in India that had no hands-on experience, and they did great. And the real key is you must know what the job is. You must know it. And this is a job of design, present, and sell. In fact, what's going on here is there's so much confusion on what is an architect. And a lot of it came from the stupid job descriptions that were out there. And, you know, it's funny because I've been an architect for a quarter of a century now, maybe a little more than that, which is highly embarrassing because now I realize how old I am, but that's neither here nor there. And, you know, I first became an architect, we were called design engineers. And then we became pure architects, never touched the tech. Now, I will tell you that I don't drink a lot. Like, I have 4 to 6 drinks a year. And when I drink, it's a Macallan 25. It's a really nice scotch. I don't drink a lot, so the $500 bottle I buy, and it lasts me about 20 years because I drink that little. So I just happen to like Macallan 25. So a bunch of buddies of mine, we would get together every 3 months over WebEx and then Zoom. We'd have a Macallan 25, a really good scotch or whatever we liked, and we would literally look at these cloud architect job descriptions and laugh hysterically. It was our comedy routine. It was better than watching Friends or any kind of funny comedy in the world. And then, you know, I wasn't the only one to look at it. The architects that I know were all like, what's going on here? And then what happened is Gartner, and if you're new to tech or haven't been in tech, Gartner, if you want to know what's the newest trend, ask Gartner. You want to know who has the best firewall, ask Gartner. Most innovative cloud, ask Gartner. Best software-defined networking, ask Gartner. Best SASE, ask Gartner. That's all they do. Now, Gartner looked at these dumb job descriptions and then said, this is not an architect. So they decided to basically ask the chief information officers, which is everybody's boss, by the way, what do you want in the cloud architect? So I want you to understand corporate strategy, because if you're an architect, this is all we do. At the top, we've got a chief executive officer that determines the strategy and vision for the company. But they got to help people to get the job done, right? So they have a chief information officer, and the chief information officer does this: figure out the tech that'll execute the CEO's mission. Unfortunately, I'm working as my own CIO and the CEO right now, and I need to hire a CIO coming soon to worry about our tech, because we've got lots of tech, but that's neither here nor there. And I can't do 2 jobs at the same time. Like, you can't fly an airplane and keep people in their seats. So what happened is, if you want to know what your job is, ask the CIO. Do you know what your hiring manager is going to hire? Whatever the CIO tells them. You want to know what the CIO wants? Good news. It was posted in CIO magazine for you. And according to Gartner, written in CIO magazine, and my team will give you the link on both Zoom as well as YouTube, because I want you to be armed with accurate information. They asked the CIOs, what do you want your cloud architects to do? And these are the 3 main responsibilities: leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, developing and coordinating a cloud architecture, and developing a cloud strategy and coordinating the adoption process. Coordinating it, not doing it, coordinating it, meaning there's your genius cloud engineers that are going to build it for you. And then they were said, what are the day-to-day operations that you want your architects to do? And they said, helping to find talent with the necessary skills, assessing applications, software, and hardware, creating a cloud broker team, establishing best practices for the cloud across the company, selecting cloud providers and vetting third-party services, overseeing governance and mitigating risk, working closely with the IT security people to monitor privacy and develop incident response procedures, manage budgets and estimate costs, and operate at scale. So this is what you're hearing here. You're hearing the customer telling you, this is what I want. So I focus on what the executives tell me. I don't care what anybody else tells me. I care what the boss tells me. Why do I care what the boss tells me? Because they're the person that's going to pull the trigger on hiring me. They're the people that can pay it. So in sales, there was a really good book, and it was called Selling DeVito, the very important top officer. They're the people that make the determination. So here's something interesting. Architects, sales reps, account executives, we focus on the CEO. Engineers focus on the techies. The techies have a very different perspective of the world than the CIO. But unfortunately, that's why the techies never make it to the top level until they get these business skills. So you can play your game any way you want, but I've gotten lots of people hired in India. And most of them were executives. And they did really, really great. But India is that engineering culture. So you will find a bias under certain people to be biased towards engineers. But you're dealing with big companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Google. They want architects, not engineers. Bearing Point, Deloitte, JP Morgan Chase. So, because we've got architects working right now in Cisco, AWS, Microsoft, I'm 99% sure Google, CDW, Bearing Point, Capgemini, Caliant, Deloitte, Accenture, Apple, and I know I'm missing a bunch of really great companies, but all of them are executives, and many of them never worked in tech before they got their first architect job. But they all had extremely big degrees of soft skills. Hey, look, in fact, I'll give you some examples. Daniel Bosu, 20 years old, didn't even finish high school, working as a cloud architect at JP Morgan Chase. Jessica, mental health tech, working at JP Morgan Chase. Ivan Tamba, working at AWS. Zero experience in tech, working as a solution architect. Coyote, working as a solution architect. Jeffrey West, working as a geologist, now working as a solution architect with Calian. Jermaine was a landscaper, now working as a solution architect with, I think, Microsoft, or was it Capgemini or Bearing Point? One of those big ones. But the point is, I could give you a list of hundreds. Delray Bat, working as an EMT, now working as a cloud architect, cloud security architect with CDW. I could give you example after example after example. So, it's up to you. Competency matters more than experience. Chris or Chow or Eddie, please tell me where I'm headed next. Cloud EPMS. As a Go Cloud trained architect, are there prospects of getting hired outside of Nigeria or for remote jobs in locally located developing countries? So, of course there is. So, I got asked to support a client in Japan last year. So, of course there is. Now, I will say it would be easier if you were in the US, UK, or Canada. But the answer is, of course there is. I think you'll also see that there's a lot more coming into Africa, I think, in the very near future. The providers themselves are spending large amounts of money to try and train people locally. And, right now it's getting really hard to find Americans that are willing to work in the US. So we're starting to look all over the world. Cloud EPMS, I actually have somebody working for me that lives in Bamenda, Cameroon, and I'm really excited about it. And he's not the first. I'm going to tell you that right now. He's fantastic. There's going to be more people on my team in either Cameroon or Nigeria coming soon, as soon as we can grow to more staff, because I got to tell you, when we can find people that really want to work, that are happy to work, that are good at their job and pleasant to be around, that's an employer's dream. So yes, there are prospects of getting hired. I will tell you the salaries will be lower because what happens is we get paid a pricing parity. And what does that mean? It means that, if it costs you $3 million to buy your house for a basic house, you need to earn more than if you can buy a basic house for $24,000. Cost of living is different. So what happens is there will be paid scale differences, but as a cloud architect, you can live a wonderful, high-paid life and have a fantastic career no matter where you're at in the world. And yes, there are the possibility for remote jobs. I'm not going to tell you they're very easy in Africa to get, but when you are great, and it's hard to find great, I can interview 10,000 people and not find great. So when you are great, the world will find you, especially if you build the brand and do all those things we tell you. The world will come seek you out. And you may even get sponsorship opportunities for other countries as well, if you're great. So the key is making sure you are great. Chris, we can go to the next one. Or VP, can we attend live classes multiple times once we enroll? I hope so. I hope you're attending 3 times per week for the full year. And you get recordings of lectures to refer to. We don't take access to your recordings away, so you can continue to watch the lectures that are inside of the program. So absolutely. Because our goal is to make sure you've got the best cloud computing career. And, you know, I've got a lot of people that have experience that come with me. I've got a lot of people that have no experience when they come with me. And sometimes you want to go back and look at some of the architectures we do, because we do healthcare architectures and banking architectures and, retail architectures. How would you start a social media company? How would you start a Netflix kind of architecture? We do lots of architectures. So there are times where we want students to come back, go back to a leadership lecture, a business acumen lecture, a negotiation lecture, those kind of things. So yes, absolutely. Since you're a reputed program, do you have tie-ups with hiring companies looking for hiring architects? I do, but we don't have to use them that often. Just yesterday, a company told me they need 3 of our architects. There was a hiring manager at AWS that came over to me and said, Mike, I need a lot of references from you. And I said, why? He said, because everybody else is producing techies and you produce architects. He was a director from AWS. He even came to speak to my class. And he said, I don't need a techie. I need an executive with business acumen, leadership skills, emotional intelligence, sales skills, executive presence, the presentation skills. I can train tech, but I need the right attitude, energy, enthusiasm, passion. I need what you're talking about. So we do have some tie-ups with certain companies and a lot of recruiters. But if you're with us, you will not need our help. I mean, I do make recommendations to certain students constantly when recruiters reach out to me, which they do every day, and say, I need somebody. So I do that. But if you're in our program, you will have such a brand that the world will be coming to you for the rest of your life. That's why we do what we do, to make sure. It's one thing for me to give you a fish. And it's another thing for me to teach you how to be the best fisherman or fisherwoman in the world and be able to pull out that fish from the ocean and feed your family anytime you want. So that's what we do. But of course, yes, we do have tie-ups with people as well. VP, which all domains do you get a chance designing cloud architecture? Everything. Global banking, retail banking, retail stores, social media companies, video content distribution platforms, healthcare organizations, web-based applications, everything. Because if you're an architect, you're going to need to know about business, and more business. And I need to be able to get you hired. So we cover all these architectures and we keep rotating through them. All of them. But all with an architecture focus. Because remember, we're architects. Is microservices Kubernetes? So we cover everything that's needed. Are we microservices obsessed? No. We do cover microservices, but we're not microservices obsessed, and here's the reason why. Almost everything that's going is lift and shift. So our training is focused on what the employer is asking for, not what the engineers think they need to know. We constantly adapt our training programs to what the employers are looking for. So if you think you know what they need, you don't. I promise you that, unless you're a working architect. We cover everything in the manner that employers desire it. And it's funny, we get engineers and other people that have never worked as architect. What's in your program? What's in your program? What's in your program? And I say, why? And they say, I want to know if I need it. And I say, do you know what an architect even is? Have you worked as an architect? And they say, no. And I say, then you probably didn't need this. This is not an architect skill. This is not an architect. This is not an architect skill. We do cover it from an architecture perspective. What is the architecture perspective? When do you use microservices versus not? If you do use microservices, what are the design patterns for the microservices? Same thing with Kubernetes. What's that control plane doing? Where's your data plane? That's what architects do. We are not DevOps engineers. So as such, we have a much smaller focus on DevOps technologies. Our focus is on architecture. What do? We design, present, and sell. So the things that are included in our program are networking and data center things, BGP, OSPF, IP addressing, subnetting, supernetting, route summarization, WAN technology selection, when you use SSL-based VPNs, IPsec-based VPNs, software-defined networking, SASE, private lines, Ethernet over MPLS. How do you do your VLANs, your VLAN tagging, your VLAN trunking, your link aggregation groups? What kind of NAT are you doing? how to set up your NAT, overlapping IP addresses, going to the business, business buys another business, for example. What are we dealing with? Spanning tree, VLANs. These are the kind of things that we're dealing with. Servers and virtualization, and yes, containers and container orchestration, like you're asking about here, but from an architecture's perspective, not an engineering perspective. Block storage, object storage, file storage, VPN concentrators, next generation firewalls, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems. We'll cover load balancers. We'll cover DNS, DHCP, ARP, proxy ARP. We'll cover databases and how to use them and how to scale them. That is the architect's tech piece. But that's not enough. You got to remember that 2/3 or more of this job is related to your sales skills, your presentation skills, your executive presence, your communication skills, your business acumen, your ROI modeling. That's the job. That's the job. So that's where we spend so much of our time, because those are the absolute things that you need to do to be hired. It's all of that. It's not by any stretch of the imagination, being hands-on Kubernetes clusters. It's just not. But yes, we do build containers and things like that to get hands-on with it. Can I elaborate on the most critical skills that a cloud engineer needs to be successful? Yes. Network and data center skills, which are the skills that I just talked about for the architect. Plus, now for the engineer, we're dealing with a deep hands-on techie, right? So that means extremely good Linux engineering skills. Extremely good. Extremely good hands-on cloud skills. Deploying things from the management console, the CLI, API calls. Relatively decent Python skills. Relatively decent Bash shell scripting skills for the cloud engineer. Some knowledge of CI/CD pipelines. Knowledge of Terraform for the cloud engineer. And knowledge of building, and building. See, as you can see, Cruz, that cloud engineer and that cloud architect are like worlds apart. Architect, design, present, and sell. Engineer, code, configure, script, build. Building architect designs a blueprint. Construction crew builds it. Same thing. Great question, Cruz. And we teach, obviously, all of these in our cloud engineering program. That's the point. Can I talk about coding in our architect program? There is no coding. Cloud architects design, present, and sell, and do not code. All job descriptions have every silly, irrelevant thing that you can possibly imagine. Job descriptions include 20 Olympic gold medals, 1,000 years of experience on Kubernetes, software development, networking skills, database skills. And the reality is, if you tried to do this and spent 1,000 lifetimes on this, you still wouldn't get it all. You can't learn everybody else's job. You can't fly the airplane. Architects design, present, and selling. Yes, we get a wish list, and here's what's going on. There is 5,000 applicants for every single job that goes through HR. 5,000. 5,000. So what happens is we have to put a bunch of irrelevant garbage on job descriptions for this reason. HR cannot go through 5,000 job applications. So what they do is they stick a bunch of irrelevant roadblocks there on the assumption this: if you've been doing something a long period of time, you must be good at it. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And here's the reason why. I know people with 20 years experience that were a disaster on day one, and they're even worse of a disaster 20 years later. And I also know that there are some people that are really, really good with no experience. And as a hiring manager, I need competency. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, we don't code. The last 100+ architects, I asked them, it's a big joke every time I get together. Hey, are you doing any coding? And they laugh. Coding? I don't touch the tech. I'm an architect. In fact, go watch some of the videos every time I interview a hired architect. Do you code? They laugh at me. They're like, code? What are you kidding me? I'm like, I keep hearing architects code from everybody that asks me questions. Although I've never met an architect that could code in my entire life. And they all laugh hysterically at me. Architects don't code. And we teach you in our program what will get you hired. I do not teach things that are going to keep you from getting hired by teaching you to waste your time on things that we don't do. Because if you do, I promise you, you will not get hired. We design, present, and sell. There is no coding. None whatsoever. So we will not touch coding. And that's why we get people hired. Because I got to tell you, that's the point. I interviewed 1,000 people before I started this program. 1,000 people that had AWS certification. And I asked them basic architecture things. And every one of them told me, here's a sysops thing, here's a DevOps thing. And I'd say, yeah, how do I load share across 2 equal cost direct connections to AWS? And they wouldn't know. And I'd say, how do I secure my enterprise? And they'd say, I don't know. And I'd say, how do you set this up to deal with the compute capacity that you need? I don't know. What's the performance of block storage? Oh, it's real good. I saw my certification. Oh, really? Now compare it to this. Oh, now could you build a business case for this? Like, I don't know. How would you respond to this RFI or RFP? I don't know, but I can code. So the key is, it's fine that if you want to train nice to haves, you can train nice to haves all you want. But if you don't have the real thing, and unless you or I are vampires and we are mortals where we have 10 lifetimes, I promise you, you couldn't even master networking in your entire life, all of networking. I'm going to make this really clear. You may, in a 50-year career, be able to master BGP. Now, I didn't say SPF or intermediate systems or MPLS or multicast or wireless or unified communications. I said in a 50-year career, you might be able to master BGP. And architecture is its own specialty. And you need to be good at architecture. Simone Biles, the world's greatest gymnast, is the world's greatest gymnast because she does gymnastics. Usain Bolt, oh my God, ever watch him run? Wow. He's a sprinter and he trains sprinting. If he trained marathon running, he'd be slow. There's this guy, Tom Brady, that I keep hearing is something called the GOAT. Now, he doesn't look like a goat to me because he doesn't have fur and things like that, but they keep calling him some goat. I promise you that he spends his time in football and not doing ballet. As much as I think ballet is cool and I think it's beautiful. But the point is train for your job, not somebody else's job. And that's why we will never teach coding, because architects don't code. I need to get my architects good. It takes me 500 hours of training to build a quality architect, and I can't get them focused on everybody else's job other than their own job. I need my architects to be good. So we intentionally do not teach coding. But I get a cloud architect hired every single day that has zero background or experience in tech. I even got a high school dropout a cloud architect job in the last year without even a GED, because he was a great architect, but he does not code. And if you ask him to code, he would laugh hysterically. I've been an architect for 25 years. I wouldn't know how to code. It's not what we do. But we do have coding instructors for our cloud engineers because they do code. Collins, I know this question is not relevant, but want to hear someone's head. How often do we renew a security certification as security architects? Collins, I worry about training architectures and building careers, so I don't really remember because it's not our focus. Because like Delroy got hired with 0 certifications, and Jeffrey got hired with a cloud practitioner and nothing else. We get a lot of that. But here's the thing: I think the CISSP is every 5 years, and I'm pretty sure you recertify on that. But I think it was 120 hours of continuing education you have to do every 5 years, and then you just pay the fee. So I think it was every 5 years. I let my CISSP expire. I let certifications expire all the time because they don't want to do anything for my career. Certifications are really good in the beginning, and then after that, they don't mean anything. But I think it's every 5 years for the CISSP. But I would check with your certification provider. Anakin, hello, Mike. You have no background in college and no college degree. Just got your cloud practitioner cert and going for the essay of the Sunday. What am I supposed to put on my resume and LinkedIn? Well, I have no idea what your goals are, Anakin, and your goals will determine what needs to be on your resume. But first, we need to know your career. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that just passing the Certified Solution Architect Professional, and I'm not even listing those other ones, is not enough for any cloud job. So the question would be, Anakin, is what is your goal? And then I can tell you how to get there. But certifications will not get you any job on the cloud. And here's the reason why. Certifications keep a name of a service and how to configure that service. And the only people that do that are cloud admins. And we don't really need cloud admins because one DevOps engineer can replace 50 of them. So there is that. So the key is, what would you like to do? Sure, you can get a great job, even including as a cloud architect with no degrees, with training. And you don't need an IT background, but we need to know what you need to do. But I'm going to tell you right now, certification isn't enough to do anything. So tell us your goals, and then we'll tell you what you need to do. Love to help you. But certification is only about 10%. The certified solution architect professional is about 5 to 10% of what you need to get your first job. So tell me what it is, cloud architect, cloud engineer, and I can tell you there's other 95%. Chris or Chell or somebody go to the next one.
Mike, we have another question from Prem. He
Okay.
says, I have never learned networking in detail, neither got an opportunity to work on networking. And I have spent about 20 years in the corporate world. If I transition to cloud architect career, do you think knowledge on networking is going to be a roadblocker, or does it make sense for me to become a networking super duper guy for being a cloud architect?
Okay, so we've got two things that are going on here. We've got someone that doesn't know networking. Now, here's something, Prem. When I was born, I didn't know how to practice medicine before I went to school for that. When I was born, I didn't know networking until I went to school for that. And when I was born, I had no idea to be a network engineer, an enterprise architect, a cloud architect. I got trained for that. So the answer is, it will crush you until you get trained. And if you get trained for it, it'll be like you're great. So that's the point of education, is to teach you things that you don't understand. So no, working in networking is not going to make you a cloud architect. It's going to make you a network person. I see this in tech and I don't understand it. You know, if somebody wants to be a doctor, they don't become a nurse, and they don't become a pharmacist, and they don't become a physical therapist just to become a doctor. They go to medical school and become a doctor. When somebody wants to become a lawyer, they don't become a secretary, a dog walker, an accountant, a finance professional. They go to law school. When you want to be an architect, train to be an architect. Train to be an architect, and you need critical networking knowledge for this position. You also need critical data center knowledge for this position. But you got to get training on that. You have to get training on it. What does the cloud architect do? They migrate the stuff from the networking to the data center to the cloud, which is another networking and data center, so get training on it. And that's really the key, is if you get trained on it, you'll know. So following up on that, you need training to become a cloud architect. You can't just become a cloud architect without training. You got to remember, this is a $200,000-$300,000 plus job. At the high end, we're dealing with $500,000 a year. You need training. It's not something you just pass a certification, but Prem, you could easily do it. You're an educated person. You're a smart person. You got a lot of knowledge in you. Learn the new things and go do it, and you'll love it. So it's not like you need to study networking the way a heart surgeon needs to study the heart. But you need to have a good foundation of networking, and we teach that in our program. But great question. The architect is kind of like the internist or the general practitioner that facilitates as the coordinator. I go meet with the client. I ask them about their business goals, business pain points, business challenge. I go back to my company. In my company, I may reach out to the CEO, the executive vice presidents, and say, I need 10 people to work with me. I need a network architect, a cloud security architect, a cloud IAM architect, 2 big data architects, 3 DevOps engineers, a maintenance person like a sysops person, and 10 cloud engineers. And you get together after you meet with the client, you get everybody together in a room or a WebEx or a Zoom meeting, and you design it together. And your role is to be the expert business executive that can lead the group to build the best thing. Then you document it, you write it up, you build your presentations, you go back to the customer, you present it back to the customer, and then you help negotiate the deal. Now, once they say, I want it, Prem, guess what? It goes off to a build team that actually touches the technology. Great question. Who has the next question coming for me from which medium? You want to become a solutions cloud engineer. Okay, Anakin. So if you want to be a cloud engineer, what we're talking about is the following. You're going to need to know the following. First thing is you're going to need to get some deep engineering knowledge. What I would say is, either take our program, which is what I recommend, which is going to be the cheapest way to get you hired, or when you're done that Certified Solution Architect Associate, go to the next one, which is the Certified Solution Architect Professional. Now, that will give you upwards of 9 to 10% of what you need. Now, if you're thinking that you're going to get knowledge from a bunch of certifications, you're not. Certifications are the name of a service and how to configure that service. But as an engineer, you need to know how this stuff works. And when you get these certifications, they don't teach you how it works. They just teach you how to configure it. And if you're an engineer, you need to have deep knowledge of how this stuff works, because how else do you tune it? And that's the difference between an admin. An admin can click 3 buckets and say, I did it. An engineer needs to tune it. So what I would say is networking knowledge would be good. Now, I'll actually tell you that the Cisco Certified Network Professional will, generally speaking, that actually will give you moderate networking knowledge. So that might be helpful to you. Linux knowledge is good, but the Linux knowledge you get passing a Red Hat Certified Engineer may not be as much as if you actually learn Linux for real. So, yeah, I'd say typically speaking for engineers, we can go up to 3 certifications. For architects, we never want to go more than 2. For engineers, we can do 3. So the intro cert that I might put on your resume from the cloud might be the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, and I would get rid of those other basic ones. I might add a CCNP to it. And if you were going to add a Linux one, it would be a Red Hat Certified Engineer. Now, those 3 things I'm going to tell you combined, if you just did certifications, will give you 20% of what you need to know. So what is all that other stuff? It's the actual knowledge of how to deal with Linux, the actual knowledge of how to build the kernel, the actual knowledge of how to install and maintain it, the actual knowledge in terms of how to lock it down, the actual knowledge in terms of how to harden an operating system, the actual administration knowledge, the actual knowledge of where the stuff is in Linux and how to tune it. There's that. Then it's, can you write a bash shell script in Linux, and can you automate intelligent Linux? And if so, there's your skill. And that needs to be on your resume. In addition to that, you're going to be writing some Python stuff for content automation. That needs to be on your resume. The kind of thing that you've done and why. Automation, there needs to be some Terraform on your resume. Because as a cloud engineer, you're going to be doing a lot of infrastructure as code stuff. There should be some CI/CD pipeline knowledge that's on your resume. It's got to be there. There needs to be some kind of security knowledge. Now, you may not be working with next generation firewalls as a cloud engineer, because that's going to be more the cloud security engineer. But you still need to know what the stuff is. For example, you need to know that you're not going to be locking down your systems with WAF and Shield. If it's an enterprise, you need to understand why WAF and Shield isn't good enough when you need something that's adaptive to real-time threats. You need to know why you're not going to be using an Amazon Aurora or a Dynamic GB in a multi-cloud environment. You need to know why you can't use Elastic Container Service in a multi-cloud environment. You need to know why half of that stuff in your certification is not usable in a multi-cloud environment and what to use instead. So those are the kind of things that you need to know. And those things need to be on your resume. Just remember, not a certification job, a knowledge job. Now, 20 years ago, certifications were somewhat meaningful, and here's the reason why. Almost nobody had them, and in order to pass them, you had to work really hard and learn a lot. And about 20 years ago, they became, or 15 to 20 years ago, there started being companies that would post copies of the exam. You can buy any AWS exam you want on the internet, the full exam with the exact questions, for less than $100. Less than $100. And I could point you to 30 sites, and I could actually take you and get you 10x AWS certified in less than 2 weeks, and you could still know absolutely zero. And that's why these certifications are there. Now, these certifications wouldn't give you any head start in our course at all, because the certifications are a name of a service and how to configure it. And we'd still have to teach you how to become a great cloud engineer. And the certifications will not give you much of a start at all, because you need to know so much greater. And the way the certifications are taught, especially these learn by doing silly things that are out there, and they don't even teach you what it is. So we started this company for one reason. I was retired and didn't need to work. And I literally was asked by my friend, could you train my kid? Like all your people, they all get $200,000 jobs by the time they're like 22. I want my son to be like one of your graduates. And I said, sure. I bought him the 3 best-selling certification courses and told him I'd spend 2 to 4 hours with him. And the kid called me back 2 days later. I set up this bucket. I set up this EC2 instance. I did this. What is it? And I said, that's the key. I said, what do you mean? What is it? He said, what is it? And then I went, uh-oh. I watched those videos in horror. All of them. They were horrible. I mean, honestly, it was such a disgrace. I couldn't believe anybody would produce that. And it's the same people that are getting 10x certified or 7x certified and producing courses and content they don't understand. And then I interviewed 1,000 people that took these courses. And all of them knew a name of a service, but none of them knew anything about how it worked. And imagine you took your car, you bought a new Mercedes, and you wanted it to be performance tuned, right? And you took it to an engineer that knew how it worked. Wow. They can do things with the compression, the fuel, air mixtures, the suspension, remove weight, and build you a performance car. Now imagine if the person was certified and said, I know the name of these parts, how to turn them on, but I don't know how they work, why they work. They couldn't do the job. Kind of like a doctor. If you tell the doctor, here's your pills, but didn't teach them how to diagnose, what good would they be? So the certifications aren't going to give you much of a head start. But we will give you everything you need to know. Let's go to the next.
Okay, Mike.
Yes,
I
Eddie?
have another question from Zoom.
Okay.
It's Ben. He's asking, when does the next live class start and what days do you meet and how long is the class daily?
So the people that have signed up this morning will be in class at 1 p.m. today. So we do not run batches. So the second you sign up, the second your curriculum starts. And we don't run batches for a reason. The reason is as follows. When you deal with doctors, you've got a 3rd-year resident, a 2nd-year resident, a 1st-year resident, and an intern all in the same place. And they feed off of each other. I'm a martial artist also. When you train martial artists, you got your black belts, your brown belts, your red belts all in the same room. Why? Because you all practice and get better. So soon as somebody signs up to our course, the first thing that happens is they get immediate access to our recorded content. Instantly. They'll start working on their assignments, turning them in for feedback. They then get rolled into the next day that we have class, or whenever the next earliest convenient time they want to join our classes, and then they do these things. Now, let's say today we're doing a leadership class, because we are. Tuesday, we'll do an architecture. Thursday, we'll do an architecture, and all these architectures stand alone. So we rotate the architecture so everybody will have a chance to do a bank, versus a social media company, versus a video thing, versus everything, versus a global retailer, versus a hospital. And we do this because I can keep students in the program for a full year. Here's why I do it. If something happens in your life and you need to take a month or 2 off, I don't want you buying the course again. I want you winning. So you just take a month or 2 off, come back to the program and finish. I let you stay in the program for a year. And that way we can say that graduation for us is when you are hired, because nobody needs a year to get hired. So instead of having some arbitrary date, you start here, you end here, and you paid us and we're done with you. That doesn't work for me. If you buy our course, I want to know you're hired. So we let you stay in the program for up to a year. And it works out great. Because when we have classes, we've got an architecture thing. I've got students that are ready to get hired. That means ready to graduate. I've got intermediate level students. And I've got brand new people that signed up this morning while I was sleeping too. So into the class, the senior people will lead it, the junior people will help the senior people, and the new people will observe and learn. 4 weeks from now, those senior people are all hired. Those intermediate people are now acting as senior people, and the junior people are now assisting the senior people. A month or 2 later, senior people are hired. Intermediate people are now senior people, all excited and ready to get hired, and junior people are there. And I can keep you in there for up to a year. So that's what we do. We don't do batches because of that reason. Do love that question, though. Let's go to the next one. You missed the certified solution architect. You were skeptical. Now you've got another one. Is it going to be difficult? No, these are simple, basic exams. When we're talking about the certified solution architect professional, we're talking about a very basic intro level exam. We're not talking about a complicated exam like the CCIE. The CCIE, the Cisco Certified Internet Expert, which in my mind is actually enough to get hired. I had to read approximately 75,000 pages of reading for it, and I spent about $40,000 on that certification. Why? Because it was $400 per weekend to rent the equipment. I had taken a tremendous amount of knowledge in order to do these things. So realistically speaking, that's a hard certification. Now, people do struggle with the Certified Solution Architect Professional, and let's talk about why. If you just do Certified Solution Architect Professional training, it's a hard exam, and here's why. AWS and all the cloud providers made up ridiculous branding names for all of their services. Elastic Compute Cloud, just call it a virtual machine, for crying out loud. Amazon Simple Storage Solution, just call it object storage. And what happens is this obfuscates the underlying technology. So when you've got to remember 14,000 stupid names in your head that are irrelevant, it is a hard exam. But if you learn it the way we teach it, what you learn is, okay, this is object storage and how object storage works. Not only is this exam easy for you, but if you want to take the Azure exam and they talk about blob, or the Google exam and they talk about cloud storage, guess what? It's the same. So I wanted to prove this concept. The only cloud that I've never worked on was the Google cloud. The only one. But I know cloud. So right after we wrote the AWS book, I said to my buddy Nathan, who helped me write the book, I said, Nathan, I got an idea. And he was like, okay, what's your crazy idea, Mike? Because people think my ideas are crazy until I prove to them they're right. I said, if our AWS book is good, I should be able to go take the Google Professional Cloud Architect with 2 days notice. So of course, Nathan laughed at me, right? He said, different cloud, different this. And I said, no. I'll buy the Cybex book. I'll read it on Saturday and Sunday. I'll take the exam on Monday. Poof, passed the exam. Why did I pass the exam? Because it was the same stuff. So if you truly understand the concept, the networking and data center things, this is going to be the simplest exam in the world. But if you don't know the network and the data center, and you just try and memorize or mug up a bunch of names and services, then it'll be very, very, very challenging. So it's all based upon your approach. Chris or Eddie, let's go to the next one. Hi, Mike. I've heard you were an introvert. How did I change to an extrovert? I got training. Got leadership training, presentation training, communication skills training. And I also did this. I kind of learned early about how to build your brand through writing many years ago and producing content. So I wrote a document when I was young on Introduction to IP Multicast. You can see it on the internet. That document had me travel 200,000 miles per year for about 2 years, giving presentations to the world teaching multicast. And then after that, I was at Cisco. I had an executive coach. I took a tremendous number of presentation classes, emotional intelligence classes, executive presence classes, CXO relevancy classes. Then I wrote another document and traveled about 1 million miles explaining that to people. So you give 3 presentations a day, every day for about 25 years, you get real good at it. So VP, if you're ever scared of something, just do it. Just do it. Do it, get out of your comfort zone, practice, and sure enough, your weakness becomes your strength. But yes, I was a terrible introvert. Terrified to talk to people. I need you. How hard is it for a data scientist to become a cloud architect? Not very. I'm going to tell you this, that I've had a couple of data scientists come through my program. One decided he wanted to be a cloud engineer, so we made him one. The other's now my chief operating officer. So the point is it's not hard to do anything if you're willing to do the work and you want to learn. Data science is hard. I mean, for that, you're typically dealing with a PhD statistician. That's really complicated stuff. You're dealing with some advanced mathematics. You're dealing with some scripting and some coding. You're dealing with machine learning libraries. Oh, now we're talking about some serious heavy-duty stuff here. This is much easier. This is network and data center concepts. This is design, presentation, and sales. So what I'll tell you, probably the biggest challenge is those roles tend to be more analytical in nature. And here we need to go from more analytical to more like soft. Analytical, hard numbers. Architecture is more vision, more strategy, more explanation of what we're doing to the business. But here's the thing. We'll train you in the network and the data center skills, the business acumen skills, the leadership skills, and you'll be great. Now, I don't think it matters where you come from. I don't. You know, what I studied was internal medicine. And what have I worked in? Architecture. Yvonne was serving food before AWS hired him as a cloud architect. Coyote was a college student before AWS hired him as a cloud architect. Jermaine was selling landscaping gear before Capgemini hired him as a cloud architect. Jessica was working as a mental health tech before she got hired as a cloud architect. As that. And yes, I know Chris, she actually goes by Tia names. That's the nickname she chooses to use in Slack. And so who else could I be talking about? Daniel didn't even graduate high school and he's working as a cloud architect, and his last job was selling shoes at Nordstrom. Delroy was an EMT on ambulance. So the key is, if you will do the work, you'll be able to get there. But it's just a matter of doing the work and learning new skills. Look, I used to practice internal medicine. It's my world. So the point is you can do it, but you just need training. Anything with the right training is possible. Flying an airplane is daunting until you get training. Being a lawyer is daunting until you get training. You just need training. Becoming a data scientist, now that is daunting. In fact, I've had a lot of data scientists come to me because no matter what, they couldn't get hired, and we got them hired as cloud architects or engineers or chief operating officers or things like that. Would you say that with your program, students come up prepared to getting hired? Yeah, they're getting hired every single day because they're prepared to be hired. We are not a certification course where you take it and 10 years later, you're not hireable. Our students get hired. All of them have the opportunity to be hired. As long as they come to class, do the work, nobody needs a year in our program. Everybody can get hired if they do the work. Every day, one of my students gets hired. And they're not only learning the resume and the interviewing, they're learning the job. They know how to negotiate a higher salary, and they're getting hired. Average salary is between 120 and 275. I've had some people that are earning 275. They typically have a tech background. People with a non-tech background are typically between that 120 and 170 range on average. I've had a few that were lower because the people didn't choose to finish the program. They just took a job, and they're like, oh my God, Mike, I got an opportunity. I'm working as an Uber driver right now, and I got a $90,000 security job. Should I take it? I'm like, well, yeah. You can stay in my program until get it. So I've had some of those things, but yeah, our program gets everybody hired. Like if you're already working in tech as a developer, we may not need as much time to study for long. Actually, if you're working as a developer, you will need just as much time because we don't do software development. We do network and data center technologies. How much time will be required to become hireable in my program? It will take you between 4 and 8 months of 10 to 20 hours per week. You have to remember that as a software developer, you're focusing on code. As an architect, we're focusing on digital transformation. I will tell you your hardest time, VP, is going to be unlearning software development and learning architecture. But here's the thing. If it takes you longer and it were to take you a year because you don't have as much time, that's okay too. So we're not rushing you, but realize it's a major transition from a software developer to an architect. It's just as much as a transition as if you didn't work in tech before to be an architect, because it's a very different skill. And the way I mean this is if you were a physical therapist, it's not going to make medical school less years because it's a different job. And accountants do accounting. Finance people do finance. And if you are an accountant, it doesn't make it easier for you to do finance. So in some ways, it'll make it easier for you. So let's talk about how it will. You do know what a computer is, which is a huge benefit. You most likely know what a virtual machine is, which is a huge benefit. And you typically understand server architecture to some degree as a developer. You might understand memory management. So let's say you have 10% of those skills already. But remember, we're not designing code. We're not application architects. We're designing an end-to-end solution, inclusive of the network, the data center, business process reengineering. So keep that in the back of your mind. But you will have a great career when you're done. And typically speaking, my people that have a development background or have a tech background, they typically get paid much more when they get their first job because it looks very valuable. But the skills of the job are very different. What is the schedule for the Cloud Engineer program? It is, and somebody help me with this. It is on Tuesday. What time is at 1 p.m.? It is Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and it is Saturday at 9 o'clock Eastern time. What is the demand for cloud architects considering the next 5 to 8 years? Bigger than anything you can possibly imagine. If I had to remove the title cloud architect from me, here's the reason why, I would get upwards of 20 requests for interviews per day. So I changed it to CEO. I got rid of all that cloud stuff on my thing. It is unbelievable, the demand. And here's why. We're in the network and the data center. Only 20 or so % of our stuff is actually in the cloud. So we got to move it all to the cloud. Now, the cloud is just the next iteration of the network and the data center. And when this cloud is done, there'll be another cloud VP. The first cloud I worked on was in 1996. It was called Frame Relay. The next cloud was the ISDN cloud in like 1997. 1998, I worked on the ATM cloud. In 2000, I worked on the BGP cloud as specified in RFC 2547. In 2001, I worked on the VPLS cloud. The cloud's not new. So we network architects have been doing cloud stuff forever. But the demand is huge. And especially with the global economy spiraling into a global recession, more stuff's going to the cloud. And in a recession, cloud architects are in extreme demand. Why? They provide digital transformation to the customers. Digital transformation means the ability to do things better, faster, and cheaper with less people. And in a recession, that's what we architects do. So architects are in absolutely critical demand. They bring in money to the businesses, so they're least likely to get laid off in a recession. Because the cloud is generally cheaper and transformational, the amount of work we feel for the cloud architect in the next 3 to 15 years is extreme. And then after that, we feel the cloud architects will be working on the next version of the cloud. Just like me, been working on clouds for 25 years. All the same clouds, they just changed by a little bit. Kind of like the Who sauce, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Virtualization, which is the basis of cloud, was started in 1970 from IBM on mainframe time sharing. Cisco created the virtual LAN about 25 years ago, huh? That turned into the virtual machine by VMware, which is now the basis of all your virtual machines on the cloud. Those kind of things. Emmanuel, hi Mike, in the past you've done a labs and got your solution architect. However, you have not worked in a production environment. How do you get hired? So, the solution architect skill certification won't get anybody hired for any jobs. And labs are just labs. So, Emmanuel, what job would you like? And then I can tell you the skills that are necessary to get hired. But I'm going to tell you right now, certifications and certification labs are not good enough for any job. But Emmanuel, you can get hired. So if you tell me the job, I can tell you what you need to do. But note, certifications are not enough for anything. Just nothing. Other than putting on your wall and saying I'm certified. And can all of our students that do the work and complete the requirements get hired? No, I've got students that don't do the work that don't get hired. I mean, just buying my course doesn't get anybody hired. In fact, just somebody this morning said, Mike, I've been doing your course with 5 other courses. What do I do now? And I said, stop doing the other 5, do my course, and get hired. And they said, where should I start? I said, from the beginning again, because I want you to get hired. All my students that do the requirements will get Okay, so a manual says cloud architect. So what you have to understand a manual is what's covered in the Certified Solution Architect Professional doesn't even scratch the surface. And it's not with you doing labs in the production environment, it's that architects design, present, and sell. So if you've got a certification on your resume and you've got no architecture knowledge or training in your resume, you're not hireable. So why is this? So architects do not touch the technology, which means we don't configure anything. Which means every single lab that you've done, especially Git labs and build a web server labs, they're all irrelevant to the architect. The architect designs, presents, and sells. So what you will need is knowledge of BGP, which is not covered in the AWS Advanced Networking, by the way. You will need knowledge of interior gateway protocols, which is not covered in any certification. You will need expertise in designing the IP addressing plan, the subnetting, the supernetting, the route aggregation. You will need expertise in determining the right WAN technology. You will need expertise in determining the right switching technologies. You will need expertise in, dealing with overlapping IP addresses and DNS and DHCP and ARP and proxy ARP. You will need knowledge of determining the server virtualization strategy, the container management strategy, the storage strategies across the various storage area networks. You will need to know which business applications are going to improve business performance. You are going to know how you actually do your security environments. What kind of next generation firewalls, not covered in any certification, VPN concentrated IDS IPS system. You will need to know how to present your solutions, design your solutions, sell your solutions, build a business case around your solutions, present to a CXO level audience, present at executive briefings, presenting at conferences, selling the product, building an ROI model to show the person, leading large teams. Those are the architect skills. So how you get hired is you need architect training. And you can get the training from me. You could go get an MBA for the business side of it if you don't want to train with me. Of course, our course will cost you, a lot less and be a lot better, faster, and cheaper. But you can get those business things in an MBA program. You can get these networking knowledge pieces, but it's not going to be covered in certification. The networking thing that I told you is about 10,000 pages of reading. Those cloud data center things I told you is about another 20,000 pages of reading, but you can do it. That's what you need. You need the equivalent of an MBA in terms of business acumen. Now, we teach you don't need the MBA, but you need that level of business acumen combined with design skills, not hands-on configuration skills. That's why I came out of retirement, because people wanted to be a cloud architect. They were being taught to configure things. Now, pretend you're a building architect, and I need you to design me a beautiful hotel, and you tell me I'm good with the hammer. The hammer is the configuration. Architects don't configure. They design, present, and sell. That's the challenge. You fix that, you'll get hired. While we're at it, there's a 35% chance, 35% off of our cloud architect program if you want to get your first cloud architect job. Burra, do you have to set anything new syllabus coming up? Oh, if you're talking about the new AWS exam, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's the same thing. Now, I want you to understand this. If I eat whole wheat bread, and it's manufactured by Thomas's English Muffins bread, okay? And then they make a new bread, which is 99% the same. It's still bread. It's still whole wheat bread. And what's going to happen is when you deal with these tests, they always change them. And really what the change is they are hoping that for a period of 2 to 3 months, that, you won't know what the questions are, so you can't buy an exact copy of the exam, so you can't cheat on it. Now, you'll see the certification providers are going to be, woohoo, we got a new course to sell you, exciting, exciting, exciting. It's the same stuff. It only changes by 2 or 3%. So if you've got a book preparing you for version 1 of the exam, version 2 of the exam, or version 3 of the exam, who cares? It's so close to the same thing. So, you don't need to worry about these subtle differences so much. Sure, there's 2 or 3 things with SageMaker and things which are different on the list. You can go look them up, go to the AWS webpage. and in 30 minutes learn the 4 different things that are different. But same thing. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Only the names have changed. Yesterday, I don't care which song you take it from, but the point is it's the same. It's the same. After creating successful cloud design, they meet with the client's company's requirements. You don't understand by selling it. What are you selling? So, Ricketts, let me explain this to you. You got a proposal of $100 million cloud architect solution. So if I go with the customer and I say, look, by going to the cloud, here's the design. This design includes 100,000 virtual machines, 6 petabytes of storage, these 327 Palo Alto next generation firewall virtual machines, these 10,000 load balancers, these databases. That's the design. That's what we're selling. The design has to get built. So I'm not selling them my Word document. I'm working for AWS and I'm selling them the design that's going to force the customer to go buy 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million of AWS services. That's what we're selling. We're selling the actual services. So if I design a network architecture and I work for Cisco and I'm designing a network with 20,000 routers, what are we selling? The 20,000 routers. Now in the cloud, we're selling rented access to the 20,000 routers. But that's all it is. We're selling access to this. Now we don't build it. Here's your 100,000 virtual machines you need. And then we hand it over to a DevOps engineer that installs or opens up those 100,000 virtual machines. That's what we're selling. The actual tech that's going to be deployed. I could probably go for a few more minutes today, Chris. How can one get the job with just training and zero IT experience? Burra, my students do it every single day. If you are properly trained, you are in a class of the less than 0.1% of the people that actually exist out there. It is so hard to find a good job, you can get hired. Now on our channel, you can find tremendous number of videos who have gotten cloud architect jobs with absolutely zero experience because employers want competency more than experience. Now, in a perfect world, I could find a competent person with 20 years experience. The reality is this: there's nobody competent out there. I've interviewed 6,000 people. And of the 6,000 people, 15 were hireable. And of the 15 were hireable, 3 of them knew nothing about technology at all, zero. And I hired them because I liked their attitude, energy, and experience and taught them. It's that hard to find somebody. Barry, here's what an interview is like. Tell me how to load share across these 2 links. Lie, 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 lie. Okay, all you guys I can't hire. Then interview another 100 people, 100 more lies. Interview another 100 people, 100 more lies. Then out of nowhere, I get somebody that's never worked in tech in their entire life. Well, Mike, you use this as your BGP policy. And I say, okay, how do you secure your enterprise? And then I get somebody that tells me where to put my next load balancers, my next generation firewalls, how many firewalls I need. And they go into my IDS strategy, my security group strategy, my access control list strategy, my IAM strategy, my server hardening strategy, and I go, whoa. Well, and by the time I'm done talking with them, I forgot they had no experience. I'm just blown away by how good they are. Same way I got a job with no experience, same way all my students for 20 years have gotten jobs with no experience. Experience does not equal competency. I like to use this example. I got 2 people here. I got an 8-year-old little girl. She's got pigtails and a giant smile. She just hacked into the Pentagon. And at the Pentagon, I've got a security architect with a PhD, 50 years experience, a CISSP, a CISM. So, experience, educated. Little girl just hacked in and beat the guy with all the experience. I fire the guy with the experience. I hire the 8-year-old. I need people that can do the job, not people that have experience. That's the reason, and so does every hiring manager. But it's a good question, though. Let's go to the next one, Chris. Lewis, hello from Memphis, Tennessee. Are these certifications for entry level as well? Sorry, I just found out about the live stream. Yeah, certifications are, realistically speaking, only for junior level introductory things. Because the certification is the name of a service and how to configure that service, then realistically speaking, and then I can probably get to that one last Anakin question, and then I can't answer anymore. But the key is the certifications are good for entry level, but no certification is ever going to get you hired for everything. Certification is just the name of the service and how to configure that service. And if you want to get hired, you have to have skills, which are not covered in certifications. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And then, as a solutions architect, how do you pay everyone on your team who helps with the design? We don't pay anybody on our team. Will they be the same people builds with design? No. So here's the thing, Anakin, I work for Amazon. I work for Cisco. I work for Microsoft. I work for Google. I go design an end-to-end solution. Now, Google's paying me $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year to do the following: build the design and sell it, and that's part of my commission package. Now, if I sell $100 million of Google services, Google will pay the engineers that work at Google to deploy it. Google pays all kinds of architects a salary so they can assist on these kind of architectures. I don't pay anybody anything. The company has a staff. This is a team sport. Companies have teams. So it's not a one-man band. Company sends me with the sales rep, called the account manager, technical account manager, depending upon the company, global account manager. They typically have a sales engineer, which focuses on the techie stuff. And we architects typically parachute in and help sell stuff. Then we go work with a big team. The company pays the team. And then they pay all the other employees. Now, Anakin, you just brought up something very interesting. If I'm the architect and I bring in the money, and the engineers are the people that build it, but I bring in the money, who gets paid more? The person that brings in the money as a revenue source, or the genius engineer that goes and builds it that's a cost or an expense organization? The company pays the builders, but the builders are always paid much less than the sellers because the sellers bring in the money. The builders actually make it come to fruition, which is the saddest thing in the world, because the engineers are equally as important as the architects in every way. No engineer, no solution. Just PowerPointware and sales documents from the architects. But there is a major difference in pay between those that have the business skills versus those that have the technical skills. Wish it wasn't the case. The business skills determine what you get paid, not the technical skills. Let me end on these things. We currently have 35% off of all of our architect programs. And if you want your first cloud architect job, I strongly recommend you take advantage of this sale. We will get you hired better, faster, and cheaper than anybody else out there at a higher salary in most cases because of our extreme emphasis on soft skills. Next week, we will have another How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinars, and it's going to be a very special thing. So please join us. If you're not getting 5+ recruiters reaching out to you every day, or at least several, register for our LinkedIn and resume workshop. And everybody, give me a cloud hired on YouTube if you can. Because that's why we do what we do, to get you guys cloud hired. Take care, everyone, on Zoom as well as YouTube.